East St. John's.
Focused on quality and convenience, there isn't much you won't find at Marie's Mini Mart. Home-style breads, sandwiches, plus a variety of artisan breads and delicious single-serve desserts available exclusively at our Frecker Drive location. Marie's Mini Mart, with 25 locations wherever you go, there we are.
Welcome back to Sharing Our Cultures. This is a place where you get to meet remarkable individuals who are making significant contributions to the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Joining me today is Carey Majid, a lawyer and the Executive Director for the Human Rights Commission, Newfoundland and Labrador. And Sharing Our Cultures will be right back. Welcome back to Sharing Our Cultures. And joining us today in conversation is Carey Majid, and she is the Executive Director for the Human Rights Commission, Newfoundland and Labrador, and she's also a lawyer. And welcome to Sharing Our Cultures.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Lloydetta.
I'm so happy to have you here. We've been trying to do this for a whole year.
Yes, exactly. That's right,
and,
COVID.
That's right. But now it's finally happening, and we're delighted. Yes, I was thinking about the new initiative that the Human Rights Commission has in place. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, thanks. We applied for funding from Canadian Heritage under their Anti-Racism Action Plan project, and we received that funding last year to develop a restorative justice community conflict assistance clinic, and it's called Community Justice Connect. And so the point of this program really is to help people who are Indigenous, racialized, and from religious minority communities navigate conflict. Whatever that is, however that looks like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a human rights complaint. It could be a problem with your neighbor. It could be a problem with your kid in school. It could be an issue that you're dealing with the government department and you don't understand the forms or the application process or whatever it is. And you just need somebody to talk to maybe facilitate that conversation, to help you navigate through these big bureaucratic institutional processes. So we really frame the project very broadly. The only criteria, like I said, because of the program funding, is that you be Indigenous, racialized, or from a religious minority community. Okay. And what we're trying to do is help people using the principles of restorative justice, and I can explain a little bit about that, and also using the principles of anti-racism, anti-oppression, and layering that all together so when we approach conflict, it's not just about, like the traditional justice system approaches conflict by what rule is being broken, who needs to be punished, who's going to pay for the damage. Whereas restorative principles look at, who's involved, what harm has happened, who needs to be at the table to resolve that harm, how do we repair relationships, if it's possible to repair those relationships between the people, or at least how do we repair the relationship with the person who's been harmed. Not really a relationship, but how do we repair kind of their self, their humanity, because they've suffered this harm. So it really is about getting people coming to us, working with a team of community facilitators. We recruited about, I think, 21, and the majority of them are either racialized or Indigenous. We've had intensive training. It's been difficult over Zoom, I'm not going to lie. Zoom is not fun when you're supposed to be building relationships with community facilitators. But we have been training them in restorative justice, and we've been training them in anti-racism, and we've learned about Indigenous history, tradition, politics, current issues that Indigenous people in our province are facing. And taking all that learning plus everybody's own lived experiences, and once we start dealing with some of these complaints, and we've already had some. We had a soft launch about 2 weeks ago. We've already had about 10 or 12 people coming to us so far. And our lead facilitator, that's a permanent position that we've hired, she's basically contacting the people, finding out what their issues are, what their needs are, what they're looking for. And then once the team meets, we'll be able to try and figure out like a plan or a strategy on how to deal with that person's particular issue.
Right. Well, congratulations. That's very good. And that's right. And it is so necessary. Well, I'm interested in the intersectionality. You know, you're talking about race and indigenous cultures and local cultures, because I mean that sort of a conflict might happen between someone. As you say, your neighbor could be a local Newfoundlander, but then the person involved as the other person in that conflict could be a racialized minority.
Right, exactly. And so again, the principles of restorative justice have been used a lot, mainly in the criminal justice field and namely, with youth offenders, okay? And so it's not a mediation, it's not trying to settle problems, it's really a different sort of philosophy about how to approach conflict. And so by adding on the kind of anti-racism lens, you're asking a series of different questions. So you're not only just talking about who's being harmed, who needs to be there, you're looking at, you know, are there power imbalances between, say, a new immigrant to Canada whose first language might not be English versus a government institution, or their neighbor, for example, who is from this province? Or there could be other things you need to be aware of, like what about our own personal blind spots, or not, you know, they call it unconscious bias about who's right or who's wrong, or who's being harmed, or, you know, I think the justice system is not very well adapted to look at those sorts of different issues. What is the systemic history or the systemic barriers that maybe racialized people or Indigenous people have to deal with every day in this province? So if you're not aware of that, you're not going to think about those sorts of questions. You're not going to approach the problem in the way that it probably should be. You're going to approach it in a very sort of, you know, well, this is the way it's always been, and this is the way it's going to go going forward. So we're just introducing a different lens. We were really focused on ensuring that our community facilitators look like the people in our province, right? And we all know, you know, more than anybody, Lloydetta, how much it's changed. Yes. And so that was a very conscious choice that we made, because, I mean, I don't have the list of all the languages, but a lot of our community facilitators speak different languages. They're new to this province, they're from here, they've lived here for years, or they're just brand new memorial students, right? Yes. So we're bringing in people with just a wide swath of experience, knowledge, backgrounds, and so those people will not only bring the learning that they've been taught, but also their own lived experience about issues that racialized, Indigenous, and religious minorities face in this province, and just bring a different lens to it. Right. Ask different questions, approach solutions in a different way, and possibly be able to think about maybe not only trying to help that person find a solution to their specific individual problem, but also looking at systemic changes that could happen so that other people are not in the same situation. For example, we had one call, and I can't say too much about the particular facts, but I'll just say, you know, a person said that they were being racially profiled, right? And so we'll deal with the one particular issue if that works, and then maybe there's other solutions so that business or service provider could examine how their security or this or that or whatever look at racialized people coming into their place of business, right? Okay. So what are those other questions? Is there further training that needs to be done? Is there policies that need to be implemented? Is there something else that could be done to address these issues so that they don't happen again?
Right. Oh, that's very good. So this will be done outside of the court system?
The whole goal is to try and keep people away from the justice system, right? Because what we found, I mean, I love my job at the Human Rights Commission. I feel like there's a purpose to that office, of course, but what we find is people, particularly racialized and Indigenous people and religious minorities, are hesitant to come to the Human Rights Commission to deal with their experiences of discrimination and harassment based on their race or religion or whatever it is.
Right.
And I think it's multifaceted why people don't do that, but what we can address is the process. The justice system is a process. It's like long and emotional, and it requires a lot of energy for people who want to complain. Sometimes it's necessary. Like you said, I'm a lawyer, I've done it for a long time. The justice system and law moves social issues forward by having court decisions and hearings, and then judges can change the law and move it forward, and it evolves with society. So I got no problem with that. But what we found over the years is that doesn't actually work for the individual people always. And so you kind of have to address both things. You need to have a place where the courts can move things forward in a very big, broad way. You also need to have a place where people not only can deal with their own issues, but they can learn the skills of restorative justice, facilitated conversations, and conflict resolution, so that a lot of times they can do these things on their own.
So if someone's wanting to learn that, how long will it take? Where will they have to go?
Well, so if somebody has a particular issue, this is another thing our community facilitators could help with. You come, you call, you tell what your problem is, you talk to people, you get supports from our community facilitators, and they might be able to coach you on how to deal with that particular issue yourself.
Okay.
Maybe not. Maybe you need more supports. Like, I think the goal of Community Justice Connect is it's very flexible. There's no one way, and it really, the goal is to meet people where they are and to help them any way that we can, really.
Right, yes.
And that's another difference between us and the justice system.
Right.
There is no process. People always want, well, what do you do and how does it work? And no, like there's no rules. Like, I mean, obviously fairness and this and equity and all these sorts of things, but the rule is you come, you have a problem, we try to address it.
Okay.
There's no paperwork to fill out, there's no documents to file, there's nothing formal really about it. We have a framework, we have a process, we have trained facilitators, but other than that, the goal is to be as informal, as authentic, as transparent as possible.
Yeah, and inclusive.
Inclusive, exactly.
Because I think that's the difficulty that newcomers have, is that they don't really have the legalese, they don't have the way of speaking the legal language, and so they have an issue. They probably, English might be their third or fourth language, and they have to explain something that's happened to them. So being able to have facilitators who are multilingual, who are from diverse cultural backgrounds, makes a big difference in how they can express the difficulties or situations that they experience.
Exactly, and even, the traditional justice system, our process, you have to fill out a form. You have to write your arguments.
Right.
You have to be able to communicate in a way as a non-legally trained person that you're addressing all of these issues. We had one at the commission today about a limitation period, which is, when was something filed according in 1 year and blah, blah, blah. And so this one person was trying to say what had happened to them and how they contacted us and the timing, and it's a very technical kind of legal argument about limitation periods. And so I get it, but it was hard for this person to communicate it in a way. Now they were eventually able to do it, but we had to go and help and get documents and ask something from this and that to try and support this person's position, right?
Yeah.
Because they just couldn't do it on their own. They didn't have access to those documents. So this is why the process is to be really informal. We have an online form, and it's housed on the Human Rights Commission's website, which is thinkhumanrights.ca. And there's a little button that will link you to Community Justice Connect, so you can either phone or email or fill out just a quick form. It's like, tell us what happened to you. Is there anything else you need us to know? And the first thing you're going to do is get a call from our lead facilitator, and she'll talk to you about what happened and what it is you want to do with it. And we've had, like I said, about 12 people contact us so far. one person just wanted to talk to her, just wanted to have somebody listen to her or this person, and they had a conversation, and at the end of it, nothing happened. And this person said, thanks, I just needed somebody to listen to me. So that was pretty simple,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I think they felt that, I mean, I can't speak for this person, but I think they felt that somebody had listened to them, something had heard them, and somebody had sort of acknowledged and validated that what had happened to them was not cool.
Right, and that's just as important.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sharing Our Cultures will be right back with Carey to find out some more information about the Human Rights Commission. And welcome back to a conversation with Carey. Now, you've told us a bit about your new initiative. You've been a lawyer for over 17 years, and you've done presentations on human rights. Why is that so important to you?
Well, the part of my job that I really, really like is getting out and talking to people and answering their questions and hearing what people actually have to say about what's going on, in the province, because like I mentioned earlier, it takes a lot to file a complaint. So I hear a lot from people, and so we can kind of gauge kind of what's happening on the ground. But I love doing them because it's a chance to talk about our respective rights and responsibilities. Like, people think about human rights and they say, oh, my human rights are this, that, or whatever. But, we also have responsibilities to other people, to, if you're a business owner, you have responsibilities to your staff or your customers or these, but you also have, as a person navigating the world, your own particular human rights. The Human Rights Act here in the province protects people from discrimination, harassment, based on certain, they're called prohibited grounds, but what they really are kind of protected personal characteristics. So your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, your gender identity or gender expression, there's a whole list of them in our act. And they protect you from discrimination, harassment, like I said, which is basically being treated unfairly because of one of those personal characteristics. And you have to suffer a disadvantage, because basically the law says, lots of times people are treated differently, but if you don't suffer that disadvantage, and suffer a loss, then it's not protected under human rights legislation. It also only protects people in certain, again, social areas. So most of our complaints are at work, and they're about the failure to accommodate a person's physical or mental disability at work. However, over the past number of years, I have noticed a slight uptake in the number of people who are calling us, not always filing complaints, because of racial discrimination. Okay. So that's troubling, but it could also be not, it's not excellent, but at least that means that people are realizing that there are places for people to go if they have suffered discrimination, right? So they're coming to us. They may tell us what's happening. They may say, this was a problem, can you try and help me with it? But I don't want to file a complaint. But at least they're coming forward, because people, we can't do anything about it unless you come forward, right? So our website, again, is thinkhumanrights.ca. There's a lot of information on there about discrimination and harassment, about our process, about the presentation services or public education services that we offer. I go a lot of times to businesses, government, stores. I've done presentations for HR departments, schools, whatever, memorial, all these sorts of things. I've sat on panels talking about diversity and inclusion, anti-racism, and all these sorts of things. I also do, I don't give legal advice to organizations, but I do, I prefer actually if businesses or other organizations have questions and they want to have a conversation about legal issues, because I feel that it's better for us to speak and talk before. I can point them in the right direction. I can talk to their lawyer. I can have a conversation with a working group on diversity or whatever, so that they're at least having that human rights lens put on their conversations. So say you're a big organization, you got a diversity and equity committee, you want to set up something, so maybe you don't have people in your organization that are diverse, you don't really know where to start. So you might want to contact me. I can talk to you about it. I can, not do it for you, but I can highlight these are the issues you need to be aware of. I can maybe point you in the direction of who can help you with this. And maybe who you can even pay to have this done properly. Like, there's a lot of great people here in this province that have expertise in anti-racism, diversity, inclusion, and I'm sure it's a great business opportunity for somebody right now, right? So we can connect people, and so at least they're addressing these issues in a proactive way rather than having to deal with the human rights complaint after the fact.
And I think that's important to be proactive, because I think almost all businesses should have that human rights lens. And so it makes me think about, if you get a call from someone who feels that they've been discriminated, or someone has acted, racially motivated action towards them, how do you determine if it's something they just think happened, or if it actually is racism?
So that's a really good question, and this is another area where the law is not well positioned to address those specific questions. Because how do you find evidence to show that somebody has been the victim of racial discrimination, right? It's somebody's story. It's what's happened to them. It's their history. It's happened to me here, 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 here. We all know that racism exists, but how do you prove that at a human rights hearing? It's very difficult. The Canadian Human Rights Commission just did, it's on their website, they just did a big kind of discussion with racialized people about those exact issues. And one of the points that they raised, if the people who are dealing with complaints and adjudicating complaints at the end of the day are not diverse and from these communities, they're not going to see it. Right? So that's where the education piece comes in. Yeah, because that's really important, not so much even for the person who is the victim of it, but the people that they have to deal with on a regular basis. So some of the things the courts will look at is, me as a brown woman, how was I treated? Was I punished more harshly at work? Was I, a letter written up in my file, versus if somebody who was not racialized did the same sort of thing and it was let slide. What are the numbers, the demographics in your workplace? Are people, can we pull statistics to show that not very many people from racialized communities advance through an organization, or you kind of isolated in more clerical or lower level positions? Sometimes you could say it's a feeling that I had based on somebody's body language or the way that they approach me, and that's being used by the courts. An example from a case that we had years ago was a woman phoned a place, said, I'm interested in applying for a job. Then she came in, and I don't know where she was from, but she wasn't from here, and she said that the person visibly kind of went, okay, sure, I'll take your resume, and visibly seemed like uncomfortable, didn't know how to deal with it, wasn't sure, and she really felt like it was because of her race and what she looked like. And so those were the types of, that was her story. And that was good enough in that particular case. I think it resolved outside of the courts, but it was resolved because of her story. Yeah, that's good. I know people who've called for a rental, and they've gone to look at the place, and they have not been able to get it because... We hear that all the time. All the time. Yeah. Well, now, Share in Our Cultures, we work with young people from diverse cultural backgrounds. They've come from many parts of the world. What would they need to know? Maybe some of the countries where they're from, human rights doesn't actually exist, or their human rights have been violated there, and they're coming into a place like this where we say, well, your human rights, they matter. What do you feel that they need to know? Well, that's what I was talking about earlier, the education. People need to know their rights and also their responsibilities to others, right? And so, that it's not just your imagination. These things happen here in Canada. And also that there are places whether it's Community Justice Connect or the Human Rights Commission or your, teachers or whoever it is, whoever it is, there are people there that understand these issues and can help you. So you can reach out to talk to somebody and to try and informally try and resolve it or more formally try and resolve it. There is a place, basically.
Right. And it is important for them to know that, because sometimes when you're new in a place, you really don't know where to go.
Or you think, depending on where you're from, my husband's from Colombia, and his probably first reaction would not be to go to the government.
Right, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure lots of other countries are like that as well. Even here, too.
Right.
People might not want to go and file a complaint or go to the police or for whatever reason. So I guess what we're trying to say is, as a young person, even if you don't want to pursue that more formal route, call us and we can have a conversation and try and help in any way that we can.
Right. And having that conversation is so important. It's one person, but that conversation will help them even think through, is it just something I perceive is happening, or is it something that's really happening? Are these the words someone should be saying to me? Or, so just having a conversation with someone like yourself, another.
And everybody is different. It might just be, you want to know, you want to talk to, maybe if you're coming through Community Justice Connect, you want to talk to some of our facilitators who are a range of, like I said, university students to professional people who have been here for many years. So you might want to talk to them and find out what they've experienced, how they've handled it.
Right.
That might be it.
Right.
Learn the language to, stand up for yourself or say, hey, that's not cool. Or you could even be a person who's friends with somebody.
Right. Yes.
And you just want to have that language on how to intervene as a bystander or support that person as an ally and a friend.
Okay. Thank you very much. This has been very educational and informative, and we really do appreciate it. And I'm hoping that people will get in touch and find the help and assistance that they need from you.
Thanks so much, Lloydetta.
All right, you're welcome. And Sharing Our Cultures will be right back. Thanks to Carey and to you for watching. Join us again next time for more remarkable stories on Sharing Our Cultures.